Alright, today we're talking pedals, and specifically my pedal board. And it's taken me a while to do this because guitar pedals are like the ultimate rabbit hole that if you get too far down, you'll never come back out. We've lost many a good man and woman just to like getting engrossed in building a pedal board, buying, selling pedals, etc., etc. There's a million of them out there. The used market is like thriving. The boutique market is all over the place. But I just kind of want to talk about some of the pedals I have and the combinations that I use for some of the recordings I do, and just kind of like let you in on how I kind of chain them together, right? So basically this is the board. It's powered by a Voodoo Labs power supply, which is mounted underneath the board. But it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of a fairly simple setup, and we'll go through kind of all of them, but I actually want to skip the Digitech Whammy, which is first in the chain, and go right to the Zvex Fuzz Factory, which is a fantastic pedal. So basically all this is going straight into the front of my Mesa Boogie 525 on the clean channel, and the reverb that you usually hear is the actual amp reverb, even though I have a Cathedral, but I'll get to that later. So the Fuzz Factory is made by a company called Zvex, which this is like handmade, I think in like the woods in Minnesota. And basically, so here's clean again, and then with this on. This pedal is fantastic. I know if you're a Muse fan, Matt Bellamy has had one of these built into one of his guitars. And the thing that I like the most about it is this, I mean, aside from just the awesome like fuzz sound, it's like super thick, but as you can tell, if you have like the gate up, it's not noisy at all. And the cool thing is, once you kind of like start choking the signal, it'll start breaking up like really in like a really cool way. Kind of like, you can kind of hear like the electronics break up. So I'm a huge fan of the Fuzz Factory. And I used to be a real big muff guy, but I think this is just kind of like a big muff on steroids. There's so many cool different sounds. Even just as like a noise generator, there's like just an insane amount of things that you can do with it. And I have this running into an Earthquaker Devices Palisades, which I did a separate video on just this with Justin if you want to get more in depth into it. But what I love about this, it's like kind of like a tube screamer, but just like with like a lot of versatility. So it kind of has that like tube screamer sound, but what I really love about this is it has two different channels of gain. So as you can kind of see right here, you have gain A and gain B. So you can have like really kind of drastically different sounds coming from the same pedal. You can kind of fuzz it up. There's like really just a million things you can do. Again, I'm not going to get too far into it. You can check out the Palisades video if you want to see more about that. But something I really like to do on this, if I'm not going for like a tube screamer like sound, I'll put it on the lower gain setting and kind of like play finger style. And I think, especially with like the Strat on the middle pickup, I think that sounds really cool and like kind of like not too much of a overdriven way, but still kind of has a little bit of edge to it. So the next thing, and this goes to one of my all-time favorite pedals, is an Electro Harmonix MicroPog, POG standing for Poly Octave Generator. So what it does, it takes your original signal, and then it can either add the octave below or the octave higher. Kind of get that kind of sound. Now, the octave up sound, I'm not a huge fan of. It kind of like is really grating on my ears. Just as an example, like octave all the way up. I'm gonna blend that in. It's almost like that like organy kind of synth sound. So usually I keep the lower octave up, or the lower octave higher, the sub octave higher, and then the higher octave kind of lower in the mix, and then the dry thing all the way on. And I think that kind of creates like a really cool thick. And especially when you combine that with like a distortion. kind of thing going on, right? And then after that is the Electro Harmonix Neo Clone. Again, you can kind of tell I'm a big Electro Harmonix fan because the pedals are relatively inexpensive and they're super quality. Now, chorus, if you've watched the other videos, you probably know I'm not a huge chorus fan. But the Neo Clone is actually kind of like a more subtle. So I generally won't use that kind of like alone. But I think if you add a chorus to like a fuzz, again, like to put the Fuzz Factory on. It kind of gives it like, I don't even know what the sound is. Like just more of like an evil thing, especially if you play stuff like. So like without the chorus, if it was just something without it, and then with it, it kind of creates like a atmosphere, I guess. So again, even though I'm not like a huge chorus fan, I think this one in particular can kind of just subtly add different things to it. And that's feeding into the carbon copy delay without. Again, just having a little bit of delay on like any kind of lead thing, I think is like fantastic, you know? Now it doesn't have like a huge trail. Again, you can adjust all these, but just having a little bit of delay kind of thickens the overall sound. Just makes things kind of sound better most of the time. Finally, that's going into the Cathedral Reverb, which does a lot of different things. Like I said, usually I use the amp reverb because I love the Mesa reverb, but the Cathedral one is really cool for, I mean, a lot of different things, especially ambient stuff. Like this is turned on like pretty thick just to kind of. Get cool like, you know, sound bed layering type things. Another cool thing about this is it has an infinite switch, which means if you press it while you're playing something, it'll hold it infinitely. Like that'll just keep going on, and then you play over that. And it has like a cool kind of release function too. Again, if you want more on the Cathedral, I made a separate video just kind of demoing all the different types of reverbs you can get for that. But then finally, it goes into the Pigtronics Infinity Looper, which by far is the most important pedal that you can ever have because it's so great for just kind of like practicing, just kind of like laying something down, and especially if you have a pedal board, you can kind of start experimenting with different things. Like, for example, I'll just kind of loop the chords for that one song that I put up last week, the acoustic version. So. Invest in a looper if you don't have anything. If you have just one pedal to use, get yourself a looper. It doesn't have to be as nice as the Infinity one. Cool thing is it has tons of features, and with the foot switch there's a lot of extra functionality, capability, etc. The last thing I kind of want to talk about is the whammy, especially if, like, let's put the, so I've got the overdrive on with the polyoctave. So one thing you can do if you wanted to go an octave higher, right? All it does, any single note can go an octave higher when you engage this. So if I start with this A note, gotta turn it on first. You can kind of take it, and it's almost like you're bending it up an entire octave. In fact, you can actually do 2 octaves, which is like kind of severe. So here's an A, an octave A, and the next octave A. So there's a million different things you can do with the Digitech Whammy. I think really, to me, I see it more as kind of like a very drastic effect, especially in kind of like a lead playing atmosphere. But again, the beautiful thing about pedals is it just kind of unlocks your own creativity. You can find your own voice, even if like some other player has the exact same pedals that you're using. There's an infinite amount of ways that you can kind of tweak them to get your own sound, and really how you affect a pedal going into another pedal will kind of like change how the next pedal kind of like alters the signal. So again, if you're getting into pedals, do it with caution and responsibility. It's like I said, man, I've been there, and it's rough. Once you break the surface, there's so much going on. And another thing too, you might notice that there's actually space right here, which is kind of like a pedal board. A pedal boardist's worst nightmare, because I feel obligated to just put something there. But this is kind of like the ultimate measure of self-control, me not buying something to put in the upper right corner of my pedal board. We'll see how long that lasts. But right now, I feel I'm pretty happy with it. Maybe if I had to choose one thing to get, I might get like a phaser or something like that. But again, at my heart, I'm kind of a purist. These are more just kind of like effects. I love playing just clean channel stuff and with overdriven amp things. But you can't be a self-respecting guitar player and not have at least a cursory knowledge of effects pedals and pedal boards. So again, I hope maybe you learned something. And if you have any questions, hit me up in the comments on Twitter or Instagram or the website, and I'll catch you guys soon. Thanks.